What's up guys, today I'm giving you a first look on the Electrum Model E Elite. This is Electrum's latest version of the Model E and I absolutely love it. So let's take a look. The Model E Elite sells for $199, but with discount code PBStudio you can save 10%. It features a 16mm polymer core, 4.5-inch grip circumference, 5.25-inch handle length, elongated shape, raw carbon fiber face, static weight of 8 ounces to 8.3 ounces, a swing weight of 122, RPM of 1800, and it also features thermoforming foam injection and includes a 6-month warranty, which I believe is up from 3 months, which is what they used to have. One of the most notable things in their spec sheet is the use of graphene. I'm not going to pretend that I can tell you exactly how this impacts a pickleball paddle, but if you research graphene, it is talked about as a substance with incredibly impressive properties. A quote from Google says, "Graphene is the thinnest material known to man at 1 atom thick and also incredibly strong, about 200 times stronger than steel." Articles go on to point out that graphene has a very wide array of uses in many industries. Outside of a few random cheap paddles on the internet, I could not find any other company mentioning the use of graphene in their paddles. Other notable features are that if you take the grip off, you'll notice that we have a molded handle rather than one that has pieces of wood to create the shape. It also appears that the handle is a separate piece from the face, which I wouldn't classify as a true unibody paddle. If you want more information about this, I'll leave a link down in the description. Farmer Lanky made a video that compares a true unibody paddle versus two-piece versus the exposed polymer handles that a lot of paddles are using and the various durabilities of each. So if you want to check that out, link in the description. It's not necessarily a bad thing that it has two pieces. It should still be much more durable than non-thermoformed paddles that don't have a unibody design. So I wouldn't stress about it, I just wanted to mention it in case you were curious. You'll also notice that the grip is not an octagon. They opted to go with the same half oval shape that they have been using on the previous Model E. This didn't bother me this time, but of course it's always better when paddles have a full octagon handles. But while using this paddle, I never really noticed or complained about it, so maybe it doesn't really matter. Alright, so at this point I've hit almost every single thermoformed paddle on the market, and this is the stiffest thermoform to date. But don't let that fool you into thinking it's a negative thing. I absolutely love how the ball feels off the face. It might be my number 1 or number 2 favorite feeling thermoformed paddle off of the face. When the ball impacts, it feels very solid and stiff, and I don't really have a great way to explain it without you hitting it, but all I can say is that the more I hit it, the more and more I came to love the feel of the face. It has a nice response and feedback while using it. Just be warned that if you're expecting it to feel like the original Model E, it doesn't. They're almost polar opposites. Power is also fantastic. It's honestly very hard to rank the thermoformed paddles in terms of which is the most powerful, but I would put the Model E Elite on the upper half of power for thermoforms. Counters and overheads felt very explosive, and this is coming from me, where both of those are some of my weakest shots in pickleball. Specifically, my backhand punch, I felt like it had much more power than I'm used to having. I felt much more confident that I would actually put the ball away. Serves had great depth, serve returns felt very easy to put near the baseline, and occasionally I found myself having to dial back my serve return on slices because the ball would go just a bit further than I was used to. I think some of the additional power that I'm feeling could be the increase in swing weight from my double black diamond because it's about 8 points higher on the swing weight scale, which is a pretty significant jump and probably contributes to the paddle feeling so solid. If you didn't like the original Model E because it lacked power, the new Elite doesn't have that issue anymore. One of the biggest things you should know about this paddle is that higher swing weight. Coming in at 122, this will not be a paddle for those who heavily favor hand speed, unless you're already coming from a paddle with a high swing weight. 122 is pretty high and may feel very slow in your hand depending on what you're coming from. As always, you can check out my paddle stats spreadsheet down in the description to see the swing weight of your paddle and get an idea. Anytime I switched back to my 6-0 double black diamond, the increase in hand speed was immediately apparent. When using the Elite, I had to be much more prepared because I felt like if I was late, I wasn't going to be quick enough to catch the ball in time. I also noticed my arm feeling more fatigued after a session than when I used my double black diamond. To be clear, this isn't something unique to the Elite. This would happen with most paddles in this swing weight range. When it comes to control, I didn't have any issues getting used to it. It's very clear that we've separated Gen 1 raw carbon fiber paddles from Gen 2 raw carbon fiber, and at this point, I'm so used to the Gen 2 paddles that I don't notice a big adjustment when I start reviewing them. In fact, there are certain areas where control has become much easier because I don't have to swing as much, particularly blocks and resets in the midcourt. I can hold my paddle completely still and the ball has enough energy to make it back over. Just be warned that if you haven't tried a Gen 2 paddle yet, this will be a big adjustment from Gen 1. I'm not saying that these are easy to control, just that I've played with them for so long that they have become much more natural for me to control. When I first started playing with the Elite, the first thing I noticed is that outside of the sweet spot, the feedback was much more harsh than other thermos I've hit so far. The energy return wasn't worse than the others, it was just more apparent when I hit outside of the center because of the different feel. On other thermoformed paddles, you can feel the difference when outside the sweet spot, but it's much less noticeable than on the Elite. The more I played with the paddle, the less I noticed it. Out of the box, I found it jarring, but after a few sessions, I stopped noticing. This may also be a pro for some people who enjoy having that response and feedback when they're missing the center of the paddle. Overall, this is easily on par with the sweet spots of all the other thermoform paddles, which is to say, it's very good. I haven't used this paddle long enough to notice any significant durability issues. However, my brother now has my second one and will be playtesting it thoroughly to see how the durability holds up. And what I'm about to say next is purely speculation and not fact. Assuming that Electrum's graphene claim is true and they're using a meaningful amount in their paddle, I'm optimistic that their paddle will delaminate less. I haven't talked about this in any other video yet, but what everyone is referring to as delaminating when you hear that core crinkling sound is actually a core failure in the paddle. I recently cut open a few thermoformed paddles that were delaminated and noticed that the core was being crushed. I'm not going to go into why this is possibly happening in this video. All you need to know is that the core failing is a very large portion of the issue, if not the majority.
All right, here's a core with the face still on it. Squishes, you can probably see and hear that. I'm using one hand. If I use two, it'd squish way easier. If I go over here, no squish, no squish, no squish. The only area it's squishing is where the sweet spot is. And if you look, like, this face is not lifting at all. Like, that is very much glued to the core.
So delaminating isn't really the technically correct term anymore. I do understand that that was probably part of it, but I think the core failure is a much bigger issue, and we'll save that for another video. So I say all of that because if Electrum's claim about graphene is true and it is helping reinforce and strengthen the core, this would be a really big deal. However, more time will be needed to see if these claims hold up. If something changes, I will make sure to let you guys know. Going into this first look, I honestly didn't expect to enjoy the Model E Elite. I really wasn't that excited to try it because Electrum's been falling behind this last year. I thought this would be another thermoformed paddle that started to blend in with the others. And honestly, I was wrong. I ended up loving this paddle. Every single play session, I had a huge smile on my face while using it. The feeling you get from the Elite might be my favorite of any thermoformed paddle on the market right now. If I had to go to a tournament tomorrow, I could easily bring the Elite and compete just fine. The only downside I had with the Elite for my game was the shorter handle made it more difficult to do a two-handed backhand, and I didn't love the higher swing weight. I could still use my two-handed backhand, I just found it more difficult than when I used my 6-0 double black diamond. I like to speed up off the bounce with two hands for my backhand, so it was an adjustment to do that with a shorter handle. The higher swing weight also fatigued my forearm faster, which made longer sessions more difficult to play through. Those were honestly my only two complaints about this paddle, and I could in theory get over both of them. At this time, I don't think I'll be switching to the Elite because I really value that longer handle and faster hand speed on my 6-0, but the Elite could easily be my second choice at a tournament. If this paddle were made in the same shape as my 6-0 or even just with a slightly longer handle, I'd probably be all over it. My recommendation is that if you like the Model E and wish it had more power, this is a fantastic upgrade and I have no issues recommending it. The Elite is for a player who can handle high swing weights, wants high power, and doesn't mind a shorter handle or stiff face. If you have issues with weaker wrists or forearms along with stiff paddles, I would not recommend checking out the Elite. It also may be difficult for some women to use this paddle because the grip circumference is very large at 4.5 inches. If grip size is important, you may want to look at some of the other thermoformed paddles that are smaller, like the Legacy Pro, which is 4.125 inches. I absolutely love this paddle, and I'm glad to see Electrum stepping it back up. They were the OG of raw carbon fiber paddles, and it's great to see them being competitive again. I will definitely continue to play with this paddle because honestly, it's just a lot of fun. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to click like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.